Hey, what's up everybody? This is Brendan Hauser with EVOQ Bikes. So this might be the Cat 3 version of bike radio because I want to talk about getting on your first Cat 3 podium, which is not an easy thing to do. And that's going to take up most of the episode. So if you're already crushing, then maybe this isn't the episode for you. Also want to talk about losing motivation, especially if it's happening mid-season. That's a big thing that can happen and we obviously want to avoid that. And then do you need a rest week when your training's gotten a little sporadic and you might not be doing all of the workouts during the week? So you're like, my load is maybe at 75%. Do I really need to take a rest week? When do I have to take the rest week? What are some signals that I should take a rest week? Resting is obviously important, but you also don't want to just take a rest week because you kind of train 3 weeks and then you're just resting. You don't really need to do it, and that's sort of pointless. So let's jump into this. Athlete made some very basic comments that I think can really help us ask more questions about our big picture focus on our races and results. And he was talking about a crit that he did and he regretted not taking more risks. And he said, I was trying to wait it out to the last lap, but then I just didn't have the legs. And I'm pretty disappointed that I'm not getting on the podium. And I feel like I need to work on mental toughness. In one line, he just hit 3 massive topics of, okay, is waiting to the last lap your best bet? I'm sure as hell not waiting to the last lap. Number 2, he's bummed that he is not getting on the podium. Let's ask the question, have we, working together, discussed, is the podium at this type of race a logical goal? And I think it's something that you really want to make sure you're putting the right goals together for yourself, or you could either not shoot high enough, or you could be setting yourself up for disappointment. And then mental toughness, obviously a huge aspect. So within this, I want to talk about early season races as a litmus, what that provides you. We'll talk about the mental toughness, how to take these lessons from what in the moment seems like a loss. It's not a loss. You got to get something from this and move forward. And then I'm going to talk about his specific big picture progression. Is getting on the podium actually realistic for this athlete? So number 1, to describe him a little bit better, he has really good 3, 5, and 20-minute power. I mean, that's incredible to have those good watts. And I'm not just talking about looking at a watts per kg chart. This guy can go, he's a Cat 3, he can do fast group rides with 1-2s. He can put out efforts at hour 3.5 of a long ride, which is really good for a Cat 3. But waiting to the last lap, he has a decent and enough anaerobic capacity. We actually worked on that this season early on because surges were more challenging for him than they were a big hole in the armor, let's say. And so while he might not ever be a 10 out of 10 on crushing a 1-minute 30-second effort or being able to get to the front to then sprint for the win, because we all know it's not just a sprint that happens, it's a sprint to the sprint, to maybe there's a sprint. All that on the gas is not something that he naturally excels at. So don't put yourself in that position as the way that you're going to win. Take a flyer with 5 laps to go, put in, and you obviously, I realize you can't control a race on your own, and sometimes the race just unfolds and it's coming to a sprint and it is what it is. But waiting till the end might not be your best bet. So make sure you have your tactics dialed in. And how do you do that? You do early season races. And I'm going to do a podcast on Andy Coggin's podcast when he was on Inside Exercise. I believe that's what it was called, because he made some really good points of when you stop making progression in training, that's a lot of times the signal to go race. And that's why we do these base periods. We have a period where we're building up the fitness even more to be race specific, and then you go race. He missed a couple races got canceled. He didn't have these early season ways to kind of get a sense of where am I. And so when he went to what we consider one of his priority races, it was really one of the very early races of the year for him. So when he didn't do as well as he wanted to, he was bummed. And I'm trying to encourage everyone to understand that was only the 3rd race of the year. You need to learn from that and then take that to the next race. And you need to learn from that race and go to the next race. And when you're a Cat 3, everyone is training. Almost everyone. You have some people that don't train. They're just freakish athletes, and that's, good for them. But most people are training. And just because you're training doesn't mean that you're going to get on the podium. I want to talk about, and this is a good time actually, big picture progression. This guy started as a Cat 4 in 2019. Or I should say he was a Cat 4 in 2019. 2019 and 2020, he was getting like mid-teen finishes, so mid-pack, but finishing. He did well enough in a few races that he could get his Cat 3. 2021, he gets his Cat 3 and starts cracking into the top 10. Then in 2022, he starts getting more top 10s. So it's like now he's always in the top 10 or many times, but hasn't hit the podium yet. So what I was saying before, it's definitely a realistic goal for this athlete to be shooting for the podium. And while this sounds like, Brendan, that's like a basic progression, sometimes people go from Cat 4 to, I want to go and be a top 20 at Unbound or Mid-South Gravel. And that's just not realistic, and you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I know many of you are like, this sounds very obvious, but it's not. I just don't think people always lay out a year-to-year progression of what they should expect. And I think you want to set some really reach goals that would totally shock yourself and go for it. Don't be disappointed if you don't get it. It's a reach for a reason. And then have other races where you're like, hey, I'm going to go win this race. You know, there's a saying, spend a third of your time reaching up to people at a level higher than you, spend a third of your time working with your peers, and then spend a third of your time reaching down to help people that are trying to come up to your ranks and teach them the few things that you know. And we're all learning and sharing wisdom throughout that whole interaction. Mental toughness is, I want to say, half of bike racing. How many times, whether it's in training or a race, does mental toughness come into play? How many times does it come into play before we even get on the bike? And it might not always be mental toughness, but mental focus and being able to control our emotions that we've talked about before on like VO2 max workouts. There should probably be a little bit of anxiety before that because you want to do well. And at some point, I think we get to a comfort level where it's less anxiety. We know that we're prepared and we're just going to go give it our best each time that we do it. But I remember being anxious for super hard intervals for a really long time. And I would probably say I still have some anxiety that I enjoy because it keeps me on my toes. It makes me make sure I have my nutrition dial, that I've eaten the right amount of carbs, that I'm eating healthy, that I'm doing all the things so that I can go find success in that interval session. Here's the question though. What are you not believing in? Why are you not feeling mentally tough? Do you not believe in the plan that you're on? Do you not believe in your own personal development and the actual skills that you have? Or is it maybe a more personal, there's something that is just holding you back in other aspects of your life that is seeping into the cycling? Definitely happens. So try to get a handle on that. And this guy is strong. He's riding, we've talked about it. He's riding with 1-2s on the weekends. He has the watts that he can put out at the end of a bike race. He has the over-glorified watts per kg chart. I'm not saying he's over-glorified. I'm saying people sometimes look at a watts per kg chart and see numbers and think that that automatically means success in a race. No, it's a good nugget to have, but make sure you can do those efforts in the race, like towards the end of the race when they actually really matter. He just needs some more confidence. And so take all these things together. He's all these good things going for him. He's not believing in himself. So take the lessons, move forward. If you get ho-hum and all glum on yourself, after the third race of the year, it's going to be a long season. You need to be able to take some knocks if things don't go your way and say, all right, how do I move this thing forward? It's really, really important. And look at your big picture progression. And then talking about racing, I had an athlete who was losing motivation. And I felt like earlier in the year, I kept saying, hey, we're going to have this period where there's like no races, there's no events. He had some camps, he had some huge rides with friends going on. He had all these actual physical goal events that he was going to, whether it be a race, a group ride, something. Quote unquote, getting faster and chasing metrics. Of course, there's going to be someone out here that loves doing that. For most people, for most athletes that I've talked with, most people that I've coached, or just athletes that I've consulted with, chasing the metrics gets old after like 3 months, okay? And we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to belabor the point. This guy's losing motivation because he has nothing to look forward to. Like going and doing intervals for nothing is really difficult. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to go do these VO2 max intervals just to get faster. Faster for what? So I would highly recommend you find a group ride, you find an event, you find a grand final, find a bike race, find a gravel race, find a track, find something that you can put on your calendar, having a physical event to go to. There's just something about getting ready for it that is extremely important if you want to keep, your motivation going. And then also zoom out big time and look, if you are a Cat 5 or a Cat 4 or a 3 or a 2 and you say, hey, I want to be a 1, that's motivation for like in a year probably. So it doesn't have to be just one specific random race, but have like, where are you going? What's your really big goal with this? Like, do you want to become the best that you can become? Then your goal should be a Cat 1. I tell everybody that. Maybe you physically don't have that capability, but when you first start setting this all out, you don't know that. I got dropped so hard on my first Cat 4 race, and I will never forget watching everyone ride away. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm just like at a Cat 5 level. But thank you to the people at Genesee Valley Cycling Club that taught me you just keep going back and you go back and you learn and you go back and you get dropped and you go back and you get dropped again and you go back and you learn some more and you get a little bit faster. I mean, that's just that's how this goes. And it's hard because now we have social media. You know what everybody's doing. You see everybody's stuff on Strava. We can psych ourselves out. Let's not do that. Focus on you. Focus on getting better. The gains that you can make in 6 months, you can make some great gains. Now imagine 3 years. It's like so many people are like so hyper, like, they're going YOLO for 8 months and they think they're going to get everything. This might just take some time. I'm not trying to knock anyone down if you're super gangbusters for 6 months, but I want to encourage people that have the time to say, hey, I really like this sport. I want to keep going. Maybe 2025 is my year. Maybe it's 2027. It might take some time, and that's okay. So the last thing, the rest week, usually, and to make this more clear, say you train 5 days a week, and you've got a week where you train 3 days, and then you got a week where you train 4 days, and then you've got your normal week, and you're like, well, the first 2 weeks were kind of like whatever. So I'm gonna train another week, but then you miss a day, and like you're just busy, and it's not like you're skipping training on purpose, and you keep going. This isn't everybody, and this is like, I just want to make this point as something to help you think about your own rest weeks. Sometimes when the training drags on like that, you've never had that mental reset of, hey, I'm not training for a few days. There's something to that. When you just, either you go for a recovery ride or you go for a walk, you have more time in your day to do all the other stuff that your life is demanding of you. When it just is always like on your mind, like, oh, I'm training in 2 days, or I'm training tomorrow, I'm training this, I got to train today, I got to train. When you do that for 2 months, I just see athletes, not everybody, but I see people start to get a little lost in it. It's just like training is kind of there, but you're not fully in it. And I would say after about 6 weeks, I usually recommend to somebody, hey, let's just take 3 days, chill, maybe go for an easy ride. I'd really rather see you like focus on all this life stuff you've got going on and then come back super hungry. You don't have to do that. It's something to think about. It just, if you find yourself like, well, I don't really need a rest week. Well, I don't really need a rest week. I don't really need, you might just need that mental reset. Hit the reset button, come back stronger. Guys, thank you so much for leaving your reviews on Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. Ladies, thank you for following on Spotify. That really helps the algorithm. Humans in general, thank you if you're watching on YouTube for subscribing. Let's get to 5,000. We are getting some bigger names on the podcast to help us all get faster. And the one comment that I've gotten is, well, I'll be honest, I looked at your podcast. You guys have almost 5,000 people, this one guy said, who I'm not going to spoil who it was. But I think it's a pretty damn big name. I'm super pumped to release the episode. And he wouldn't have come on if you guys weren't subscribing. So that's the only reason I always ask. The bigger we can get this, the bigger guests we can get. We can pick their brain. If you have any specific questions you want me to ask these athletes, coaches, and world tour riders, Olympians, we just posted Colby Pierce, hit me up. Email me, Brendan@EVOQ.bike. And if I think it's good that everyone will get something from it, I'll definitely add it in. We just dropped the new astronaut shirt. The ducks are gone. Most of the ducks are gone. There's a couple left. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks for telling a friend about the podcast. Good luck with your training. Nationals this weekend, actually on Friday. Funk Bottoms Gravel Saturday. It's going to be a wild one. Let's go.